Greatest 911 ever. It's a phrase that's often spoken, but a question that's never really answered. The latest hotly tipped candidate for that title is this car, the 992 ST, and it's easy to see why. GT3 RS motor, 6-speed manual gearbox with lower ratios and a single mass flywheel, and all this gorgeous retro detailing. What's not to love? Well, pretty much nothing. But the greatest, well, it's impossible to tell unless you can gather all the other greats and drive them back to back on the same fabulous roads. And that is exactly what we're about to do, starting with this car, the sublime 2.7 RS. But then what? Well, I do have some thoughts, but we need a magical place where I can crystallize them into a group of finalists, and then we need to manifest that group into this fabulous location in the Black Forest. Luckily, we know a place.
Welcome to Porsche's secret stash of its most precious road, race, concept and prototype cars. Pretty heavenly, right? And they're all ready to drive right now. All we have to do is choose the 911s that best represent the breed, and then drive these phenomenal machines for 3 days back to back to pick the greatest of all.
Well, this place is pretty cool, isn't it? We could spend hours in here, probably days. In fact, I'd quite like to pitch a tent and just move in. But we have a job to do, and that is to choose our greatest 911 finalists. We've got the bookends, the 2.7 RS, the original icon, and the 992 ST. But now we need to fill in the blanks. So while I wander around in a bit of a daze and try and work out some sort of a plan, maybe you should spend some time with the 2.7 RS. Remember, for some people, the greatest 911 debate begins and ends with the 2.7 RS. Let's find out why. We do want to find out what makes this car so special, but I'm keen that this video isn't just a history lesson. This is about the driving. This is about beyond the numbers, beyond the names, beyond even the significance, really, of what these cars represent. The magic is in the driving. So let's take a little look at the history and the spec of this car, and then really get into it. I suppose we could have gone back to the very first truly lightweight 911 built for homologation purposes, the 911R, with 210 horsepower and just 800 kilos to push. It really did propel the 911 motorsport story, but just 19 of those were built in 67 and 68, and this car, the 2.7 RS, demonstrates that unique 911 connection between motorsport glory and incredible road cars so much more fully. It was the first 911 to wear the Carrera badge, the first with different size wheels and tyres front to rear, and hence these flared arches, the very first production car to have front and rear spoilers, and the RSR that it spawned won the 24 Hours of Daytona by 22 laps. It won the Targa Florio and countless other races.
Porsche intended to build just 500 RS models to satisfy FIA Group 4 homologation requirements, but eventually 1,580 were made. The final tallies were 17 base vehicles, sometimes known as RSH for homologation, 200 sports, 1,308 tourings and 55 race cars.
The engine is, guess what, a 2.7 litre flat six with Bosch mechanical fuel injection, makes 210 horsepower at 6,300 RPM and 188 foot-pounds at 5,100. Now, this iconic ducktail spoiler actually increased the top speed by 4.5 kph. The engineers basically added material millimetre by millimetre until they saw an increase in drag. On the 5th of August 1972, 3 Porsche employees filed the patent disclosure document 2238704 for this ducktail, and the rest is history. But it's history that's living and breathing and that we can enjoy right now. Living and breathing is absolutely the key, because the 2.7 RS is completely alive. And the stunning thing about it despite the fact that we're celebrating the evolution of the 911 and taking in the greatest hits, if you like, it already feels perfectly realised in this car. So all of the things that I'm going to talk about in all the other cars, traction, engine response, agility, steering feel, they're so beautifully represented in this car. It isn't a case of recognising little seeds of what makes the 911 special and, oh, I can see how they've built on this to make something special. It's already special. It's already so cohesive, so light, so agile, and it just pulsates with feedback and engineering, just completeness. Like a car of this vintage to feel so brilliantly at home when you're pushing in it, it's just fantastic, this thing. So the detail, let's talk about the detail. Well, the steering, this really big steering wheel, but so thin and just bubbling away with feedback all the time. The weighting is quite heavy, no power assistance, but as soon as you're up to speed, it all feels appropriate. And it's not just got feel and feedback, but it's got some accuracy too. Obviously the rack is slower than modern cars and modern 911s, which just snap between direction changes now. But it's just beautiful. It really, really is. The gearbox, it's the old gearbox before they got the G50. And it takes a bit of practice. Long throw, slightly stringy, awkward feel to it. But again, it doesn't take long before you get used to it, and then it feels really natural just to row it around. It's such a joyous car. It's ridiculously satisfying to drive. Okay, the pedals. For me, the throttle pedal is just a little bit too low set for the heel and toe, so that takes a little bit of getting used to. The brakes, obviously no driver aids, no ABS, no ceramics, but everything is leveled up to the same level. So although yes, you do have to respect that this is a car from a different era, it doesn't feel like there's weak links because everything's in balance with the next thing. The engine and the traction really are the cornerstones though of the 911 legend, and here they just work so well, and it really rips along. As soon as you get above about 3738, the car is moving, and that's what I really have been surprised about. It isn't that this car is fantastic to drive, because I knew that would be the case. It isn't that it's got steering feel in abundance and character in abundance. Again, I knew that would be the case. It's the fact that you can actually cover ground at a stunning pace. You can properly attack the road, and the car responds. It's the sweetest of sweet, and it is so much more than an origin story and a car that we should have here just to be a complete picture. It's a contender. It's a real contender, this thing. Whoa. You never know if it's your last time to experience a car like this. when you get a chance in one. And so you have to enjoy it, and you have to wring everything out of the car, everything out of yourself, and try and lock it in your brain, because it's a magical experience. It's the best. So where do you go from the 2.7 RS? Well, if you're Porsche, you go to the 3-litre RS, but therein lies the problem. If we just do it chronologically and take every great 911, we'll have 150 cars in this test. I'm incredibly tempted to take the 930 Turbo. Such a significant moment in 911's history. Turbocharging has just become such a part of the 911 story, and we will have a turbocharged 911 in this lineup. It's a non-negotiable. But I don't think it's going to be the 930 Turbo. Let's save that for a bit later on. One car I do want to shine a light on is something that feels like a proper successor to the 2.7 RS. That's this car, the 3.2 Clubsport. 87 they came out. This is a pre-production car, prototype from 85. But it's such a lovely purist car, and it's got the ethos of that 2.7 RS. They only built 189 of these cars, and they don't really get the love and recognition they deserve. Still claim 231 horsepower, although the engine was blueprinted higher rev, so I think the truth is somewhere north of there. But all the good stuff, lightweight carpets, thinner glass. They removed the sun visor on the passenger side. The Space Saver alloy is now actually alloy. The impact bumpers are gone. No wash wipe for the headlights. There's just all these lovely little details that are typical Porsche that are greater than the sum of their parts. It's 100 kilos or more lighter than the 3.2 as well. I love this car. It could very well make the list. But there's one more car that I think is just as significant, fantastic to drive, and although everyone knows it, you can't ignore it. This is the 964 RS. It's a mega car, and it is our next contender. Immediately, there's more weight to this experience. Grip levels have gone up, suspension is obviously much stiffer. No power steering. Obviously the Carrera did have power steering, the RS doesn't. And that means the 964, despite how tiny it is and the looks, there's a real physicality to it as soon as you get in. So what you end up with is a more physical, slightly more locked down, definitely more grippy experience, and it feels more focused. It's really locked into the surface. Turning response is really good. But obviously what you don't have is the absolute immediate power of the new cars. So what you really need to do is keep the thing on the boil. That's how you keep the car alive. What it absolutely has is the communication of the old car. There's such incredible steering feel. This non-assisted rack, like I say, it sort of defines the experience in some ways because it is quite heavy. But the payback in terms of steering feel and texture is incredible. It's, I'd say it's a step on even from the 2.7 RS. What you don't quite have is the same sense of throttle adjustability on normal roads, on give and take roads like this, where you can't lean on every little part of the chassis because you can't see around the corners enough. It feels like a car that's yearning for a racetrack, so you can absolutely commit, load the front tyres to their absolute limit and then bring the chassis to life. In the 2.7 RS, it always feels like it's in its sweet spot. I think with this car, you probably have to work a little bit harder to find it. But having said that, the incentive to do so is really high because it gives such reward. The gearbox is night and day better, so much more well-defined. Easier to hurry if you want to do that, and this car you sort of do want to hurry it. It feels like a car that wants to be hustled even more. It's a proper car. It's a workout. It's got that intensity that you start to feel with the later cars. The strangest thing about the 964 RS is that the media hated it when it came out. Too stiff, they said, too uncompromising, and not enough performance or tactile reward over the standard Carrera. On the face of it, it's easy to see why. Unlike the 2.7 RS, the body shell is almost identical to the Carrera, just the most subtle of flared arches. The 3.6 litre dry sumped flat six, it's blueprinted and it's got its own engine code, M6403, but it only gets a 10 horsepower bump from 250 to 260 horsepower, and there's not a ducktail in sight, just a retractable spoiler like the standard Carrera. This is the most subtle of RS models.
However, delve a bit deeper and there's plenty more to discover. Parts of the body in white are seam welded for added rigidity, the bonnet is aluminium instead of steel, and the RS features thinner glass all round. The RS also features a unique limited slip diff, those gorgeous magnesium cup alloys, and Porsche even ditched power steering.
The suspension isn't just 40mm lower and with unique dampers for this incredible ride height and stance. There are also adjustable front anti-roll bars and at the rear too, plus rose joints for the top mounts. So there are big changes. The brakes at the front directly from the turbo, and the rears are lifted from the new Cup race car, from which this car is clearly derived. So while the 964 RS doesn't look like one of the extreme aero-obsessed monsters that we've become used to, it doesn't really get more motorsport than the 964 RS. The driving experience is a bit like the aesthetic really. Not an ounce of fat in how it responds. Hunkered down, aggressive feel to the way it goes down a road. Yeah, this is quite cool. We're starting to see a combination between the deft feel of the 2.7 RS and then the greater control of the modern cars, and with that, this high speed, super agile balance that you can play with. Shouldn't be a surprise that all of these cars are going to be fantastic, but we do have our work cut out to pick a winner.
But we must, which means we need a new contender and another trip to the world's greatest secret bunker.
There had to be a 993, didn't there? We couldn't ignore this generation of car. And the turbo, I want to take the turbo because as a kid I remember seeing the performance figures of this thing and it blew my mind. 408 horsepower for the standard car, four-wheel drive, so the turbo went from the sort of widowmaker reputation to something that was just devastating. It absolutely blew the doors off basically every contemporary supercar, and it set the die for where the turbo would go. This unbelievably ballistic but really usable sports car, and they look fantastic. This is a Turbo S, you can tell by here, so went up to 450 PS, even rarer. I think they built 345 Turbo S, highly sought after. It also had lots of adjustable suspension bits and bobs underneath, so incredibly cool car. But speaking of turbocharged 993s, behold, this is a 993 GT. This is the race version, but known as the GT2. It takes everything that's great about this, strips out the four-wheel drive, strips out a ton of weight, 200 kilos lighter the GT was, or the GT2 as it's well known, 430 horsepower. There was an Evo model that came along for the last year in '98 with 450 horsepower. The tacked-on arches, the whole look of this car is just unbelievably cool. I desperately think a 993 GT2 should be there. But to drive, although it's mega, it has got that very intimidating, very scary chassis, and it just catches up with you in some of the fast corners. the 993 RS is just such a beautiful balance of performance, specialness, drivability. It doesn't have the aggression of the GT2, but I think as an overall package, it just squeaks ahead. So next contender is this absolutely beautiful 993 RS. This is the vibe that I love from a hardcore 911. This is a 993 RS. It was used as a school car, this one, at one of the Porsche performance driving courses. It's done 91,000 kilometers nearly. The dash is cut for the roll cage. You can see all the seam welding, super stripped out. This taps into something that I think's magical about RSs. And now I'm gonna start it. That's what a single mass flywheel sounds like. A little bit like the car's broken, but then the response it gives is unbelievable. And the reason that I want to show that is because it defines so much of how you drive this car. So it is all about how active you are as a driver. You have to hustle. And if you want to get a rev match downshift, you need to be on your game. This thing is the RS vibe, the motorsport lineage distilled into a road car that is just about a road car. Okay, so the differences. Let's talk about the mechanical chaos in a minute. But just to view out some of that target that I spoke about before, those front wings are gone. They're much more smoothed off in this car, aren't they? And that changes it, but the car still feels incredibly small and agile. The steering's now power assisted. So it's much lighter and it suits the car because the car has an agility that's a good step up from 2.7 and even the 964. I just want to pour the car through the corners and really start to attack the turn-in and the brakes. Obviously we have ABS now, still no traction control. But even though there's power assistance, the grit and feedback is still there, and this whole car might look a little bit softer edged in its shape than the 964, but it's got a grit and an aggression to it. Out of the corners, the diff locks up and shunters. The engine revs freely. I think it's recaptured that 2.7 RS reviness and just turned up the volume, turned up the performance. The thing is alive and it feels like it can kill you, and that's an important part of the 911 magic for me. An unbelievable ability to utilise its performance and let you exploit everything it has, but a little hand on the shoulder to tell you, be on your A game, because I'm not here to coddle you. You better be able to drive. I hesitate to say this in a public forum, but I've never really loved the way the 993 looks, except obviously the incredible 993 GT2. But this 993 Carrera RS is completely gorgeous. I've fallen in love with this thing today, just walking around it. So let's just take a moment to appreciate perfection in 911 form. Of course, another huge part of the RS character is this new M6420 engine. Capacity goes up from 3.6 litres in the Carrera to 3.8, and it also debuted the new Vario Ram variable intake system for better low and mid-range response. It produces 300 horsepower at 6,500 RPM, 262 foot-pounds at 5,400 RPM. It's a very lovely thing. There's also revised ratios for the 6-speed gearbox and all manner of really lovely things. But perhaps the loveliest of all is just the minimalist interior. And this one in this spec is so hardcore.
By now, the formula is well defined. Lighter by 100 kilos and down to 1270 overall, seam welded, lower by 30mm at the front and 40mm at the rear, adjustable anti-roll bars, thinner glass, turbo brakes, the full works.
And let's not forget, this is the very last air-cooled RS. So I don't see why this thing couldn't just sew up this whole test. In fact, I can't think of a single reason why it won't. Where this car can get you is almost impossible to reach in nearly all other cars. Fully lit, no frills, no man. Yeah, I love this thing. This is an all-timer, that's for sure. Talked about cherishing these moments, didn't I, in the 2.7 RS? And you do need to cherish them, but in this, you don't so much cherish as just get stuck in and become completely absorbed. I don't need to try to store this sequence in my brain. It's burned in there. There will be no day that I forget this. Well, what a day, and we're only halfway through, but we have come to the end of the air-cooled cars, which means we have to declare the best air-cooled 911 ever, which is a massive, massive decision that I don't really want to make on my own. Fortunately, we've had someone else helping us out today. He is a former Porsche factory race driver, won his class at Le Mans twice, won the Daytona 24 hours overall, hasn't won the Nürburgring 24 hour, but he nearly did. They were leading right until the end. Current Porsche factory test driver, Jörg Bergmeister. Jörg, thank you for coming to be with us today.
My pleasure.
Like I say, you've been driving these cars, I've been driving them. I know which one I like, and we'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to get some context for what you do now. What do you prize above all else in 911s, and what do you try and take maybe from these cars to inject into the new cars that you're developing right now?
Well, I'm very lucky and fortunate that I still get to play on racetracks quite a bit, doing lap times in the various cars, especially in 911 GTs. I'm very active there. If you look at the heritage of the cars, obviously all rear engine, and that's what we still have today. And looking through the generations, the engineers always manage to gain more performance, and that's what we're still trying today. Trying to make the new cars better than the last one.
Yeah, I mean, performance, you're a racing driver, obviously, but these cars have got so much feel. And I think people like me who haven't raced 911s extensively, or at all, in fact, that's what we love about them, is the feel and the feedback. Do you get that same enjoyment from these early cars?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the feel you get, the massive amount of traction you have with all three of them is impressive, and yeah, it's cool.
They're fantastic things. Okay, so like I said, I've got my favourite. I love that the 2.7 RS still hangs together as a whole. It's not just like, oh, we could build on this and build on that. It feels like this homogeneous, perfectly realised driver's car. I love this thing once you get it up on its toes and get the balance. It feels a little bit clumsier at low speed, a bit heavier.
Yeah.
But for me, the 993 RS just nails it, don't you think?
I absolutely agree. Such a beautiful car. So lightweight. The way the power output of the engine delivers, the gears, the ratios, it's so smooth to shift. It's just lots of fun and really engaging for the driver to me.
It is, and sideways, which is something we always
Exactly.
like. Well, I'm glad I'm not going mad. I just want to talk one more minute about Jörg, because he joined us today. He had to leave his house at 4 a.m. He maxed out his 911 GTS company car on the way down here legally on the Autobahn. When we finish here, he's got to drive 500 kilometers to Leipzig. But he just loves it. And we walked into the garage this morning, the hotel garage, opened up. Jörg's already been awake for like 6 hours, and he's like a kid in a sweet shop. And that's the passion that runs through Porsche. And you feel it in these cars. And I think we're going to continue to feel it in the new cars as well. And that's the great thing about the 911 story. It just keeps on going. But we have to declare a winner, don't we? The greatest air-cooled 911 ever is 993 Carrera RS. Right, water-cooled cars to come. Well, it's called a 911 GT1, so I guess this qualifies. The only 911 to win overall at Le Mans in 1998, but I think this is a car for another day. I know it says 911, but it's mid-engined. It's not really a 911. And anyway, we are spoilt for choice. We are now in my era. The water-cooled cars, which I absolutely adore, and these were the first 911s I drove, and I followed that story through press launches ever since. And we're spoilt for choice. There's so many cars we could choose. 996 GT3, the start of this unbelievable lineage, so light, so narrow, such a pure feeling when you drive it. They really are fantastic. Equally, I'm drawn to 996 GT2, the Widowmaker, as it was affectionately known. I think the root of that was actually how scared Porsche's press department were about letting journalists out in a car with this level of performance. No traction control, remember, and so they actually set the cars up. They're hugely adjustable. They set them up to be a bit understeery. Sounds safer, but when you've got a turbocharged 911, you get a bit of understeer, the turbo lights up and it whips into oversteer. And that's where that reputation comes from, because if you drive a really well set up 996 GT2, they are fantastic. I really love those cars, but I love so many of the cars around here. This has got to be a strong contender. 996 GT3 RS, the first GT3 RS homologation, that magic word that runs through 911 history, and this is another example of it. So extreme. Porsche, when you ask them, they can't believe how extreme it was for the first RS. Carbon fibre lid, little sticker decal, fixed suspension, so doesn't have the PASM and all the stuff of the later cars, and really hardcore. This is a hardcore car with a lot of adjustability, real track focus, narrow, screaming Metzger, fantastic car. But, okay, here's another fantastic car, 997 GT3 RS 3.8. Such a sweet spot in terms of modern day performance and old school analog feel. We are literally surrounded by any number of cars that you could legitimately say should make our finalist list. However, this era where iteration was just the key, the speed of special models was coming so much quicker than in the early days, and the culmination of all of that was something extremely close to my heart and extremely special, and parked just over there. 997 GT3 RS 4 litre. What more do I need to say? What else can anyone say about this car? Yes, I know there are many, many air-cooled purists out there, but my era of 911s have water in their veins, carbon ceramic brakes, semi-slick tyres, and big, beautiful carbon fibre rear wings. This is that car. Besides, there's so much here for the purists to love too. 6-speed manual gearbox, hydraulic power steering, and the final ultimate iteration of the Metzger Flat 6, plus a driving experience that is as raw as it is unforgettable. Cards on the table, this car was my pre-match favourite.
So what makes this car so special? Well, it's a perfectly realised bridge between the classic 911 experience and the supreme accuracy and track capability of the new GT models. It courses with feedback as much as any air-cooled car, but ups the ante with that 4-litre Metzger with a block and long throw crank lifted directly from the RSR race car, plus the helper springs and rose-jointed rear suspension of the GT2 RS, and all sorts of lightweight goodies for an all-up figure of 1,360 kilos.
So the 4 litre has a lot going for it, and unlike the older cars, the performance is really contemporary. This engine has 493 horsepower at 8,250 RPM, and the car actually has a better power to weight ratio than a 992 GT3 RS. And now they are stupid money, but today at least one of them is going to have the kicked out of it just as God intended. Okay, so the leap into the water-cooled, and what a water-cooled car we have in the 4-litre RS. The crazy thing is, the way this car gets down the road, the feedback immediately from the steering and the chassis is absolutely familiar from the other cars, is unmistakable in fact. And it's quite bizarre to think 73 RS to 2010 4-litre RS, you drive straight along a piece of road, feel the way the car's wriggling and writhing over the surface. I mean, they're so closely linked. Of course, performance is not that closely linked. This thing rips. This Metzger engine is something else. Not just how quick the car is, 500 horsepower thereabouts, the noise it makes, but the response, the linearity, just how special it feels. It's got this harshness to it that's just pure motorsport. And the chassis is something to behold. I think all of these cars in common, they're not quite as stiff as you'd expect. I think we've seen a massive increase in spring rate in recent years, and you jump back into the old cars and they've got that physical ride quality, and these roads are smooth, but they all flow beautifully. Even the 964 RS is knobbly at low speed. It's not that bad these days, and this continues that ability to attack the road but be in tune with it. It's really clever how it manages to feel so combative in like how you're driving it, the high energy feel. It's phenomenal, to be honest. So I wanted to take a little time out. We've made this huge leap, haven't we, from air-cooled to water-cooled. But what does that physically mean? Because the 911 dimensions stayed so similar for so long, and then we saw a big change. So we're in the 4-litre RS, obviously. Still got the classic 5 dials in front of us. The car still feels really quite narrow, and the view, you just about catch a peak of the front wings, just like in a 993 actually. So it's not as obvious as the 2.7 and the 964, but it's still there. It still feels 911. You do feel like you're sitting higher as well. This one I feel like is a little bit higher mounted than other 4 litres I've driven, which is weird, but you still feel a little bit high up. Steering wheel, the worst thing about this car, it's got this silver, I don't know, trim around the steering wheel. Like on a sunny day it sucks and it doesn't feel very motorsport and it's terrible. That's what I hate about the 4-litre RS. That might end up being the only thing, let's find out. But everything else, little short stubby gear lever, unbelievably heavy clutch. This is always, initially when you get in the car, it always feels a bit low, and some owners with these cars actually lift up the gear lever a bit with GT3 RSs, but you get used to it really quickly. The whole car feels obviously more substantial, safer, a bit more luxurious, but the sense that you're in a 911 is absolute. The sense of specialness from lightweight is absolute with things like these door pulls. The only real difference that you start to think about when you look around is that you've got dampers that you can play with, a sport mode, and traction control and ESC for the first time. So they're the changes. I'm not going to say this is the same interior as a 2.7 RS, but you can see that evolution. And what I'm trying to say is this doesn't feel suddenly like some huge, great truck. You still feel like you're in a narrow, small, focused sports car. So the differences with some of the old cars, in terms of physicality, you think they'd be getting easier, wouldn't you? As they're getting more modern. But the clutch and gearbox on this car are so much more physical than the early cars. The clutch is like Countach spec. The gearbox short and stiff. And you'd say it's not one of the great gear shifts when you first get in it, but the more you use it, the more you appreciate just how it adds to the intensity of this car. And that's what the car is, intense. The way it changes direction, this rose jointed rear end is fantastic, and the extra torque just means there's incredible response between your right foot and the rear axle. There's not any slack, not a single bit of slack. It's fantastic, to be honest. The other thing about driving these cars that's interesting is you think, well, the old cars, you won't have to commit as much to feel the reward, but because they don't have as much power actually, and they actually have pretty good grip, the corner speed you have to carry in means that you feel like, to experience the balance, you've actually got to push a bit harder relative to its ultimate grip. With this level of torque and power, you can just be in a corner perfectly safely, spot the exit, and then light the car up and start to feel the balance shift. And what's fantastic about all 911s, and this car is just so good at it, there's no point talking about the balance in binary terms, because it's shifting all the time. You get a little wriggle of understeer on the way in. On the throttle, the torque takes the rear axle. The car's alive to every little move that you make. And when you need to be on the edge and in control of it, same thing. It expects you to know what you're doing, just like those early cars. All these things carried over and over and over generations. Air-cooled, water-cooled, you name it. It just keeps coming. The 911 shines through. How to sum up the 4-litre RS? Well, I've always just described it as the daddy because it's such an amazing thing. And this bridge between old and new. And I don't really see any reason to change that description. We have to embrace the geekery, don't we? This is an unashamed 911 fanboy video. So 991.2 GT3 RS should be very high on the list. It was certainly very high on mine, and I'd love to take it, but I promised you a turbocharged car, didn't I? And this is the turbocharged 911 of recent years. 991 GT2 RS. Just a wicked thing. 691 horsepower, rear wheel drive, all the aero, all the carbon, PDK box. So the first of those in our lineup. So really fascinating look at where the 911's gone in terms of technology and aero. The amazing thing about this car when I drove it at the time, particularly on the track, on a warm, dry track, so easy to drive, so much performance, but so exploitable, so much fun, so adjustable. It did everything a 911 should do, plus it's got a stick of dynamite up its backside. It just had to be here. Well, spot the deliberate mistake. I don't have a steering wheel in front of me, but we have effectively the fastest 911 there's pretty much ever been. And we also have in our company maybe the fastest driver there is in a 911, so it seems weird not to have that experience. So GT2 RS is all about experience, and I'm about to get a good one. Jörg, let's go. Pray for me. Okay.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, let's go. So tell me, what are your thoughts on this car? Because the thing that I'm amazed about, it's got all the power, all the potential, but it's lovely and easy to drive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really lovely and easy to drive. When you hear the numbers, or when I first heard the numbers, obviously I had some respect. But then driving it, I was like, yeah, cool.
It's just cool, isn't it?
The sound and the torque. Once it goes, it goes.
Sounds scary, doesn't it? And they actually really can be. The 997 GT2 in particular, I remember being a real sawn-off shotgun of a car until they refined it with the brilliant GT2 RS, another car that could easily have made this list. But this car, the 991 GT2 RS, is a real step change because despite 691 horsepower, scary, almost surreal performance, the magic of this thing is how cohesive it feels and how exploitable. The world seems to have overlooked it too. Everyone's a bit more obsessed with houndstooth trim and 911R, which is another car that could have made the list, but I am very happy that we have this car. The 991 GT2 RS is a monster.
Overlooked? Well, I think so. This is the fastest production 911 around the ring, and with the MR kit has yet to be eclipsed even by the new 992 GT3 RS MR. The standard car did a 648, the MR a 643.3 in June 2021. The Weissach pack adds a carbon roof, carbon anti-roll bars and mag wheels and comes in at 1470 kilos. Standard rear steer makes it feel even less. Of course, the PDK, with significant learnings from the 918 Spider, is another factor in the monster performance.
This is such a significant point in the 911's history. For me, the progression from 997 to 991 is just as big a departure as when the 996 introduced water cooling. Bigger than ever before, new engine, PDK gearbox, electric power steering. Fundamentally, this car represents a brand new chapter in the 911 story. Porsche found huge performance gains and cut lap times by a huge margin as well. Unbelievable, really. This car is ultra impressive. There is no doubt about that. But how does it compare to the old cars, and is the old magic still alive? Tell me about the big difference you feel from like a 99, let's say the early cars on the 997 to this new 991 platform and now 992. I guess mostly it's that steering response, isn't it?
Yeah, steering response is really nice. And I would also say the way the car talks to you, it always gives you a good feeling that the rear axle is always stable. And just gives you a lot of confidence. I think that's also a big step.
And then this is the first of our contenders with a turbo, obviously we've talked about, but also first with PDK. So you're the fastest man, I guess, around the ring ever with a manual gearbox car, except maybe a 962. Maybe Beloff is quicker than you.
Yeah, for sure.
But in terms of road cars, but PDK, it does bring a different dimension, doesn't it, to the experience?
Yes, I mean, it makes life so much easier, so much less to worry about while driving. But then again, I like a manual as a challenge for the driver because as a driver you can still make quite a difference on shift times, and obviously same on tire technology. On a Cup 2R like we have on here, the grip level is on a whole different level.
It really is. It's just outrageous. But even so, the seeds that were sowed in those early cars, the traction is outrageous. But now we've just got this turn-in, haven't we, as well? So
it's so precise and does everything you ask from it.
It's a superhero car, isn't it?
It is.
It makes you feel like one, and it has the ability to destroy things. Like, it just eats the road, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's mega. So tell me, if you could spec your perfect 911, you don't have to mention a generation, but like power, weight, gearbox, what would it look like?
Well, power, more always helps. Weight, obviously, less is good.
So you want
all of it.
You want
race car driver approach.
800 horsepower, 900 kilo 911.
Yeah, why not? And 1,500 kilos of downforce. How about that?
So Jörg always wants more, but for most of us, the GT2 RS is already too much. This car is shockingly fast and capable, but for me the real surprise is just how tactile and exciting it feels. It's brutal, but still exhibits the subtleties that separates the 911 from other driving experiences. I expected the GT2 RS to be impressive, but as a kind of wild sideshow. Every drive suggests it might actually be the main event. What a car. What a 911. Could a turbocharged automatic car really win this whole test? Oh yeah, no doubt at all. It's nearly crunch time, so let's drive the ST.
So here we are trying to figure out what is the best 911 ever. What's the perfect recipe? And it feels like that's exactly the question Porsche have been asking themselves lately with cars like the 911R and now this 911 ST, because the idea is pretty simple. Take the angriest motor, the angriest normally aspirated motor, attach it to a 6-speed manual gearbox, put it in a chassis that's stiff and focused, but not absolutely obsessed with lap time, and try to conjure something that melds the feel and feedback and sensory overload that the older cars have got with modern day technology, modern day performance, braking capability, turning from this double wishbone front end, but also some luxury.
Sounds a pretty appealing recipe, doesn't it? The ST really does press all the best 911 buttons, but it still prizes performance. The 8% shorter gearing, super light clutch and flywheel, and the GT3 RS's incredible 518 horsepower 4-litre flat 6 is a stunning combination. It's light at 1,380 kilos too, some 40 kilos less than a GT3 Touring. Interestingly, it deletes the GT3's rear-wheel steering for a more organic feel, that's Porsche's words. It features magnesium wheels, the GT3 RS carbon door skins, unique carbon fibre front wings, and a lightweight battery. Which sounds like proper RS practice, doesn't it? But the vibe is very different.
When you judge this car in isolation, it's genius. It's such a genius idea. It's such brilliant execution. But when you have some proper old RS models to compare it to, it feels like a strange philosophy. With those cars, they were trying to build the best thing they could, the most responsive, the most exciting, whatever they needed to homologate for racing was in those cars. The character, the excitement, how special they feel is because of that purpose. Just arrow straight, single-minded. This car can't have that sense of purpose because by its very nature, that's not what it's about. But the engine, so good. This 4-litre that they've developed and developed is now up there, right up there with a Metzger. In fact, it revs even more freely. It's got a really lovely, pure sound. Doesn't have the grit of that 4-litre RS, but it's phenomenal. The gearbox, much lighter than the 4-litre RS, but super short shift, really short geared. So you're actually using the box a lot more than even you are in the RS, I think. Up to 3rd, 4th, 5th sometimes on a road that you'd probably only be using 2nd and 3rd. You might touch 4th in the 4-litre, but probably not. The front end response from this new 992 platform with the double wishbone suspension is just endless. I can just hang on to it and it just sticks. 911s have always had that tiny bit of understeer. It's almost eradicated now with this platform. But what about feel, steering feel? Such a key part, as we've found driving all these cars from the 2.7 all the way through. Obviously, like the GT2 RS, this is electric steering. That means it's quicker, even more responsive because of this front end architecture. And it doesn't fizz and shimmy like the older cars. But it's so unbelievably accurate, and it's still got its own feel. The car is so beautifully composed, so stiff, so reactive, that there's more than enough feel. So what makes this different from a GT3? Well, that's the funny thing. You get little hints of GT3. I think one of the things that characterises the 992 GT cars, this short suspension travel feel. They hop and skip and bounce, but they control the landing so beautifully and they feel so hooked up and alive. You get hints of that with this, but obviously it's been backed off because they want it to be a more road-friendly, road-focused car. You get hints of the old 4-litre RS because of the manual gearbox. You get hints of the lightness and the sort of pure, almost recreational feel of that 2.7 RS, which has become that way just over time because the performance isn't quite up there with stuff like this. But it's all hints. And I guess my only issue with this car is that why do I want hints of other cars and bits of character injected here and injected there when the real deal's out there? And even Porsche are still making the real deal with GT3s, GT3 RSs. I get that some people want this unbelievable drivetrain in a luxury, slightly more usable package. But this thing's still pretty hardcore. It's buzzing away on the Autobahn, even at 80 miles an hour. So there's no way this car could leave anyone cold. It's mega. I love it. But it just doesn't have that like titanium, steely, unbending sense of purpose. And the greatest 911 has to know what it is. And what it is must be defined by pure competition, motorsport, engineering to create the best. Okay, the time has come to choose the greatest 911 ever, which feels like a huge, huge responsibility. It's actually quite scary. So this test has been fantastic. I know the internet loves everything to be black and white, but I'm going to give you some of the nuance, some of the detail, because if you've made it this far into the video, then you deserve the truth. The truth is, when you gather all of these 911s together, the things that stand out are the core distilled principles of what has always made the 911 so special. The response, the agility, the feedback is probably the most important ingredient of all, and the sense of motorsport that just like courses through all of these cars. And that means during these few days, I've always had little doubts about, oh, should we have brought a 996 RS because it's narrow and it would have suited these roads and it's raw like the 993. But there's a million cars we could have bought, a million versions of this test. But for me, no matter what combination of 911s you're thinking about, we've probably thought about them. And the truth is, the cars that have done brilliantly in this test would have just inevitably come up to the top of any list. I think whatever 911s we brought, the cars that have really shone would have continued to do so. Okay, I should talk about the water-cooled car, shouldn't I? Because we haven't concluded on that. I think we can eliminate the ST from the things I've already said during the in-car, but that pure focus, intensity just of these RS cars just isn't quite there. Now, I would have put my mortgage on this car winning the whole thing. I absolutely love what this thing represents, and I would never have thought the 991 GT2 RS would get close. But it's unbelievable, this thing. The way it elevates performance to such an extent, but keeps right at its core all those things I've already talked about, and makes it exploitable, is truly insane. In 20 years' time, we'll end up doing this test again, assuming I'm still around. I'd love to be part of it, and this car will be a contender because it is fabulous. But then I think, well, can the best 911 ever be turbocharged, have a PDK gearbox, have electric power steering? Well, for me, it actually could. If someone told me this was their favourite 911 ever, no problems with that conclusion at all. It's mega, a real surprise, a real surprise. But this thing's still the daddy. I love everything about it. The way it crosses the bridge between the air-cooled cars and the water-cooled cars is just out of this world. And it's got that like high energy, absolute malleable balance that's so evident in the Carrera RS that's already come out as top of the air-cooled cars. All of the stuff that makes this car brilliant is fully alive, fully realised in this car. So for me, still the king of the water-cooled cars. Okay, so now I have to choose between these two cars, which is almost impossible. There's like a cigarette paper between them. I think the advantages of this car, the size, obviously 911s were tiny and this still retains that. The fact that you can enjoy its grip and chassis balance at slightly lower speeds. It doesn't have cupped tyres on it. It's just a bit more easy to feel the absolute potential of this car on the road without doing 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's mega. On the other hand, this thing takes all of those qualities, brings the level up, but still feels so exploitable. It's so raw and it just courses with joy and excitement and intensity. Like I say, I've had a very good day, can you tell? So which of these two wins? I mean, you can't lose. You cannot lose. I want to take this home. I want to have it at the Nürburgring in a garage and never stop driving it. But by the slimmest of margins, the greatest 911 ever is the 997 GT3 RS 4 litre. It's just the king, it's the daddy. It's peak 911, it's peak life, it's peak everything. It's amazing.